Hello and welcome to World Talks. My name is Sasha Farbach. Now, Romania is facing renewed political uncertainty after Prime Minister Ilie Bolojan's government was brought down in a parliamentary no-confidence vote. Now, the collapse comes at a time of economic pressure with a record budget deficit and rising political tensions across the spectrum. Now, as a key NATO member on Europe's eastern flank and an important EU partner, developments are being closely watched beyond its borders. We're now joined by former Romanian diplomat Eusebiu Slavitescu in the studio. Welcome back.
Good to be here.
So, a bit of a crisis moment right now for Romania. We have here an interesting quote from President Dan, which basically says he wants a pro-Western government within a reasonable amount of time. So, what does that mean precisely? When would a new government be formed? Give us your take.
So, as of yesterday, now the Bolojan government, it's the caretaker, the interim government, until a new solution, a new government, it's sworn in the parliament. So according to the constitution, the President Dan right now is having formal and informal conversation with political parties. Since we don't have a majority, like a political party 50+1, he has to talk to everybody, although he does refuse to speak with the extremists. Although they have a huge chunk of the parliament, they are the second political party. So right now the conversation, we're going to see conversations between President Dan and political parties, preferably, pro-European, because up until yesterday, this is actually very interesting, President Dan would only speak about pro-European political parties. As of yesterday, it's the first time he uses pro-Western political, because the extremists in Romania are no pro-EU, but they are pro-Western in the sense they are quite MAGA aligned. So you see, there's a bit of a thin line in here. So probably he's looking at how things are standing right now, and they are not looking good. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a prolonged political crisis right now, at a worst possible time, not just for Romania, the region, European Union, and the world.
Mm-hmm. Also, if we're looking at the no conference, you said that now Bolojan will be this kind of interim person for a moment. But if we look at the vote, it passed with 281 votes. Now that's well above the threshold. I think it's about 233. Yes. But tell us again, what was the main catalyst, Roman? What was the reason that this was even able to pass?
The reason is that the Social Democrats, as they were part of the government, last year in June, everybody negotiated, they signed an agreement, a coalition agreement, with some very necessary reforms. Last year we had the highest deficit in the European Union, 9.3. That's unseen before. So we needed to take a lot of reforms, long overdue reforms, in a very short period of time, which Ilie Bolojan sort of did. He started with raising, the VAT taxes. So that wasn't very popular. When in September, October, he started to bring on the table reforms, much needed administrational reforms. Like, for example, this was one of the main debate why the Social Democrats actually left their own government and voted their own government down, to put it like this, is the reforms of the national companies. We have 1,600 national companies, all of them on losses after the revolution. Only a few of them would profit, and they have monopolies, so that doesn't really count. So, because it comes down to corruption. I don't really like to belittle my country when I'm in the foreign press, but I don't have a choice. These 1,600 companies, national companies, they have been used in these 30 years plus, for party loyalists, mistresses, families, no competences, no transparency whatsoever. For example, Ilie Bolojan, this government, brought on the table, a proposal to sell some of the shares of these companies, to put it on the Bucharest Stock Exchange. But that would come with transparency, with, policies, with meetings that are transparent and visible. And this is not something that the Social Democrats were able or willing to accept. This is actually the heels of, this is where all this started. Because they wanted some reforms. They voted everything that affected the most vulnerable in the societies, the employees, the entrepreneurs, because they took the first hit. And when the reforms came to their own party clientele, well, that's when the reforms couldn't or no longer could take shape. And they found an ally in the extremist party because, remember, last year when this government was formed, the idea was to keep the extremists in check, to keep them out of the government. Just like in a lot of European countries right now, you have extremist parties quite, impressive in the parliament, but they are combinations and they're all sort of calculus to keep them outside. Well, that was, except during this time, our extremists grew, and they grew stronger as ever, and now they are the king players. Because if they decided to vote with the Social Democrat, the government went down. Otherwise, they couldn't do anything. So by voting the no confidence yesterday, they actually made out of Ilie Bolojan, who was relatively popular, but not that popular, they made him the most popular center-right figure right now. And that's a challenge. That's something that they didn't take in consideration.
So looking also at the socialists, you said they're playing an interesting game here, and the scenarios are interesting in different directions. So what right now do you see as the most likely outcome? Will they push, can they push and lead the government on their own? Do you see a kind of, let's say, a caretaker technocrat solution? It'll be early elections. What's the most likely? I mean, it's difficult, but what are the maneuverings here? Give us your take where it's going to go.
So if the liberals and the centrists are keeping their word, as they said yesterday, they will no longer constitute a government with the Social Democrats because they are not reliable, and honestly, they are not. So if they keep their word, the Social Democrats, they can only form a government with the extremists, which, by the way, it's sort of natural, since they both voted for this motion, well, from the government. Maybe you do have better solutions. Maybe you do come up with better proposals. So we either have this, which President Dan completely put it out of the way. He does not accept not even to talk to them. So either we have this, which is not very likely, or we have a minority or a technocrat government, with a no-name face, running things to keep things running up until, let's say, September or October, because we have until August. We have a deadline to pass legislation to access around 10 billion euros from the European Union. And that's a big problem because Romania we cannot not get this money. We already lost a lot of money because we were unable to bring up reforms, to vote new legislation. And on top of that, we have the SAFE program.
With all that money at stake, as well, you said, you bring up an interesting point about Europe's role watching this. It's no secret that President Dan was very much someone who made that bridge work. But I want to get back into this alliance, or we can call it that, this marriage of convenience at the moment. The far right, AUR. I remember looking back, I think first round of presidential election last year, they won that first round, right? That was the big shock. Second round, very close, ended up losing. But you call them the kingmakers. What is George Simmons? Give us a little bit of take of where he stands now, a year later. What are his options? How much of, let's say, what is his strategy in all this, you think?
So for him, the best thing right now would be, buy his popcorn and just watch things unfolding, because they are really bad. So whatever happens there, all the scandals that we have seen has only enhanced them, brought them more votes, in the polls. The second option for them would be to have snap elections, because they are right now leading in absolutely every single poll. We don't know if they will ever have these numbers in the polls again. So they are now pushing for snap elections, which nobody really wants. In Romania, there's a tradition about snap elections. Nobody wants to give up their mandate, privileges, on the promise that you might be re-elected. Also, the Constitution makes it sort of complicated. Let's say in 10 days, President Dan nominates a person to form the government. That proposal comes before the parliament. If the parliament refuses, then President Dan gets a second nomination. If the second nomination also is not voted in the parliament, then he can trigger snap elections. But this is, nobody really thinks about us. It didn't happen, and I don't see this happening right now.
Also, in terms of, remind a little bit of the region. If we look also at Bulgaria, they struggled with elections back and forth, over many years, with a president who kept it all kind of together. It's too early to tell, but do you see a similar pattern potentially emerging in Romania, or is it a different kind of...
Or even a better question would be, is Romania going to be the next Hungary? It's not. It's not. You know, with all the political drama of 2024, 2025, cancel these elections, if Romanians were able to say no to a candidate pushed both by the Kremlin and the MAGA in the White House, if we said no to that, there's absolutely no way we're going to accept the same scenario. So whatever their combination political games they're doing, Romanians won't have it. We have an overwhelming majority, around 70-80% Romanians being very pro-European, sort of like in Poland, if I'm not mistaken. Our security comes from our membership in NATO. That's no bargain there. Everybody agrees with that, especially with a brutal criminal war at our borders. So I don't see Romania changing or weakening the eastern flank in the foreseeable future. Although this political crisis, the way it looks right now, it looks like a prolonged one. And again, this is the worst possible time to have that. And there was no need to it. There was no actually need. The whole thing, it's fake. The whole crisis, it's fake. Mm-hmm. There's no underlying arguments to it, except that the Social Democrats, they refuse to work with Ilie Bolojan because they do want to continue with the liberals and with the other centrists, but without Ilie Bolojan. Because this guy was just uncorruptible. Mm-hmm. It was too much for them to handle.
So, as you said, a crisis that didn't need to occur, but it is here.
Yeah.
And we're going to be following.
And it looks like it's staying.
It's staying for now. But look, thanks for highlighting all those key points.
Thanks for having
important
me.
stuff. Thanks so much for that. That was our guest, Eusebiu Slavitescu, former Romanian diplomat in the studio. Thanks. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.